You're in the water loop.
Waterloop is made possible in part by grants from Spring Point Partners and the Walton Family Foundation. Hi, this is Travis with Waterloop. Right now, more than half of the United States is in some form of drought. It's not just out west. It's up in the Pacific Northwest. It's in the upper Midwest. There's drought in New England, and there's even dry conditions here in North Carolina where I live. Almost 80 million people live in some part of the country where there's drought. During times like this, every drop really does count. Shower heads are an easy way to conserve water in our homes. That's why I use High Sierra shower heads at my house, and I'm really proud that they're a sponsor of this podcast. They carry the EPA WaterSense label for water efficiency and use 40% less water than conventional low-flow shower heads. They use just 1.5 gallons a minute. So what does that come out to? For every minute you're in the shower, you're saving 1 gallon of water. You take a 10-minute shower, that's 10 gallons of water you have not used because you have High Sierra shower heads. Over the course of a month, that's 300 gallons of water that have been conserved. You're going to also save on your water bill and your energy bill. You can get 20% off using promo code LOOP20 at highsierrashowerheads.com.
You're in the water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop. This is Travis. Going to talk about the world of sensors and data and IoT as it relates to water. Happy to be joined by Jamail Carter with Varuna. He's co-founder and chief revenue officer. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Travis. Excited to be here.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a different area for my conversations on the podcast. So I'm glad to be having this talk here. The world of sensors, data, IoT, what's going on in that realm? Like technology is exploding all the time, right? It seems like every day there's leaps and bounds taken. But how would you describe that landscape of sensors, data, IoT right now?
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, it's expanding. I think there's a ton going on by several different companies in several different industries, really, where they are taking hardware and placing it out in, somewhere on infrastructure, in and around infrastructure to use that data to do, to solve problems. IoT has been around for quite some time, and if you think about there are research firms out there that talk about the evolution of technology. And I feel like we're, anecdotally speaking, I feel like we're at a point where we're coming out of the hype around IoT, past, almost decade. And now we're in a time frame where people are using, or companies are using IoT to solve real business problems. There are real use cases around it. In the past, I've worked in the drone services industry or drone industry, and for the first couple of years, there was just a lot of experimentation about how to use drones and what applications made sense. And, then they started to evolve and use them in specific applications for specific business purposes across construction, across food delivery, supplies. So I see, a similar evolution in IoT as well.
Interesting. And so just some terminology, maybe I should have done this first. So the idea is we've got all these sensors out there, right? And these can gather information, gather data. It shoots that data back. People can use that to manage whatever the technology is or whatever it might be. And this IoT, this Internet of Things, people have heard that for a while, right? Could you explain what that means, what that phrase IoT means, the Internet of Things?
Yeah, the simple way of thinking about it is using hardware to capture some information send that information, transmit that information to the cloud to make it available on your iPad, on your desktop, to bring that data to your fingertips. So it's basically a combination of hardware and software, leveraging cloud technology to bring that information to you.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting you make that point that like the hype's been out there for a while. It's like this thing's coming, but now it's kind of here, and it's more about implementation and actually making it work and putting it into practice, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I think but that's as I said before, that's a typical evolution of a lot of technologies, right? There's always hype around when a early technology, and then we have to see if it lives and play on, right? And the the people who determine that are the customers, right? And businesses, and they determine to a large extent whether that technology will live on and be viable for the purposes of helping their business meet specific objectives. So absolutely, I think I'm excited that we're finally in this space right now, and I think there's a lot more to be discovered, and the future is bright.
What do you think about how the reality is living up to the hype, right? Like the hype is pretty massive. It's like, I think of like LeBron James when he's coming out of high school. Like the hype couldn't get any bigger, but he lived up to it. What do you think about this space of the IoT? How's it doing?
Yeah, I think there's always a disconnect or a gap. Let's just call it a gap. How you've explained it, the difference between the reality and hype. And when it comes to IoT, I believe that gap is narrowing, and it will continue to narrow for so many reasons. Just over this past year in 2020, we saw a narrowing of this gap primarily because of the pandemic. We weren't as mobile, we weren't in person, so companies in all industries had to figure out how can we continue to provide services and products without actually physically being out there, physically being close to their customers. And so a lot of companies, we saw an uptick not only in the interest, but in the use of IoT, which makes me believe that gap will narrow as time goes on. So that's like these societal things that are happening, but also technology, the evolution of the technology is getting better as well. So the communication technology is getting better. Batteries are getting smaller and lasting longer. So there's a lot happening really, really quickly to narrow that gap between expectations and reality.
All right. Well, so how did you get and why did you go from your previous lives in drones and all that stuff into the water space? What pulled you into water?
Yeah, I'll try to make this story kind of short. It's a good question too, Travis, because we've been at this for 2 years, and every time I ask someone how'd you get in water, nobody ever chooses to get in. It seems like they're always it happened, and it's just kind of happenstance that they got here. We started.
I gotta say that's a very common question in the water industry. Is people like to say, "Did you choose water or did water choose you?" That's like a very classic question for people. So yeah, go
absolutely.
ahead.
Well, for me, my co-founder, who you've interviewed in the past, Shei Fabadei, we had another company about a decade ago in the utility space and electric utilities. And Shei, being a utility guy himself, was always interested in water. And so a few years ago, he started pinging me and asking me questions, as to whether I'm interested in this space. And I didn't know much about it, but the more I dug into it, the more I just fell in love with it. Not only the confluence of all these things, or the amalgamation of all these things like policy, people and behavior, infrastructure, all these things together just makes it a beautiful, complex problem to solve. And so, when I started looking into it and I thought about the opportunity, I thought, you know what, this is a chance for, Shay and I to create a, sustainable company, but also do good in the world. And, that's how we got into, that's how we got into water, or that's the decision making behind it.
Yeah. And what opportunity did you see for your work, your expertise when it comes to sensors, data, IoT? Why did the water space seem to be ripe for working on that?
Yeah, good question. I think there are a lot of problems or a lot of challenges in this space, a lot of things that can be solved. And when we looked at the space, we thought, through a process of a ton of customer discovery, just talking to potential customers and research, we thought, what, we can take our understanding of technology and business first, really. Because at the end of the day, we're problem solvers. We just happen to use technology to solve problems. We thought we can take our understanding of business and technology and operations and apply it to what we see as a kind of first order problem in the water space. And that problem is visibility beyond the water treatment plant. So often we talk about, or the water utility knows exactly what's happening at their water treatment plant, especially as it relates to water quality. But that lack of visibility and that lack of awareness really dissipates as the water is released into the distribution system at different points throughout that distribution system. So we thought, you know what? People want to know what's going on with their water quality. Water utilities want to know what's going on relative to water quality out in the distribution system, and that's something that we can solve. So that's the first order problem that we set out to solve, and that's what we're doing today. There's some additional things that we're excited about, but we want to start with number one.
Yeah, I want to dig into that a little bit here and learn more about what utilities, what they want to know about what happens with that water and the quality when it leaves, the treatment plant. What are they interested in? Why do they, want to know what's happening? They've in some sense done their job, right? They've treated the water, cleaned the water, it meets standards. Now they're going to send it to the customers. Yeah, but what's that interest that lies down system?
Yeah, good question. And I love the way you say, in some sense, they've done their job. Actually, they always do their job, and they do it well. We're here to support them, and I think that's that's what makes us excited, because we can continue to help. I'll say, give them superpowers, right? So they can see what's happening. So specifically, what they want to know is. Let's say, I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say that water is treated with some kind of disinfectant at the water treatment plant. Once it's released from that water treatment plant, it may travel, 40 miles to an endpoint in their distribution system. And so they want to know, if I've treated this water with, let's say, chlorine disinfectant at the water treatment plant, is that disinfectant making its way to the end of my distribution system? And if it's not, then I need to investigate why. Typically what they've done is they've sent someone out to take grab samples across their distribution system to measure different parameters, such as chlorine residuals, pH, turbidity, conductivity. And it's an inefficient process, even though they have to do it. But there's always this gap in when they check for the information and when they understand or become aware of what's happening at those locations. So we set out to actually use IoT, place these sensors out at different points in their distribution system so they can always know what's going on. So when I say we give them these superpowers to do their job better, it's just we give them the visibility that they didn't have, right? And allow their distribution system to actually talk to them in a way that it hasn't done before. And they use that for several different use cases. We can get into it as we continue in the conversation, but that's one of the problems that we're solving for them.
Yeah. And so they can see this in real time. They can make adjustments as they need to. And they don't have to send people driving all around the area, in cars and grabbing samples and driving back and running tests and all that, right? There's a huge efficiency there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a big efficiency play that is important to them. Some different use cases we've come across are maybe they are thinking about some type of a capital purchase, CapEx purchase. Maybe they want to buy flushers to place somewhere in their distribution system. But before they do that, they want to know, trends of water quality at certain points so they can determine how many flushers they need to buy and where they need to where they need to place them, right? So they may say, Varuna, can we deploy some sensors in a certain area for a few weeks or a month and anywhere in our distribution system so we can understand not only water quality, but in some cases water behavior. And that helps them determine, how many flushers they need to buy, where they need to place them. That's one thing. Another one is the amount of dosing. We can influence that by giving them that information in terms of, how much chlorine do you need? Is there a leak somewhere because numbers aren't, or the parameters that you constantly measure aren't, there's something funny going on with them. We're finding new use cases every single day, or every single week. And it's really fun because in a lot of cases, the customer is saying, oh, now that I have this capability, here are all the things that I can do with it, right? And they start to say, well, now that I can monitor these 4 or 5 parameters, what if I include this other information that I have, this other data set? I can start determining, like dynamic routing. Should I send my techs here or to spot A or spot B? Which is also an efficiency play. So a lot of things to get excited about, Travis.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you think it results in better water or better service for the customer ultimately at their house?
Yeah, I'm confident it does, right? So let's just take, one of the parameters we measure is turbidity. And so, if we are able to alert the utility that, hey, your turbidity has increased in this area, they'll know before the customer knows, right? And so before they get these calls about, hey, where a customer is saying or complaining that their water is cloudy, they can address that and be more proactive prior to any customer calls, and in some cases, maybe even prevent those calls into customer care. So I absolutely believe and know that it will help the utility provide better information, or not better information and better service to the customer.
Mm. Where have you guys seen this, at work, or where's it? Aren't there some places where you've gone in and you've helped where they really had a need to make some improvements? Something with Louisiana or some other places like that?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. We have in several places across America. I think the one that you're referencing is Monroe, Louisiana. It's a city with a population of maybe around 60,000 people. Um, we have also deployed in the Northeast, in the New Jersey area, right here, and I'm based in Chicago. We've deployed here in just north of Chicago, in a city that is about 80 something thousand. But all of them have the same need, and that need is, I'll say all of them have similar constraints, right? And those constraints are, I don't have enough people to do all the work that I need to do, and I don't have enough visibility to provide some of the service or increase my level of service. And so, our solution our solution helps them address both of those issues. And another thing that we're doing is, I'm excited to say we are also working with the largest water company in Mexico, doing some of the similar things, but also really taking and bringing in more data so we can generate more insights. And we can talk more about that if you want to, but yeah, that's just some of the places where we've deployed.
So is it just this band of utilities that's really doing this? Are the larger ones kind of trying to get more insights too? What do you see across that spectrum of like small, medium, large kind of utilities?
Yeah, the larger ones are doing it, and they're in some cases they're further along, right? So if you think about the largest cities in America, many of them have the budget, the technical staff, to implement, some solution like this. And as they work to do it, it's very, very costly. Where Varuna tends to focus is on the smaller to medium sized cities, although we do work with a couple of very, very large cities. But we found that many of these small to medium sized utilities, maybe they have, a small staff to cover their distribution system. Maybe they don't have as big of a large of a budget as some of the larger cities, and yeah, so we found a sweet spot there because they need to basically replicate themselves. Again, the phrase "do more with less" comes to mind, and of the 50,000 water utilities in the U.S. This is as well. The majority of them, 90 something percent of them are small to medium sized utilities.
Tell me more about what's going on in Mexico and what they're trying to achieve across their big systems there.
Yeah, so this is super exciting for us because it feeds into one of our strengths, a couple of our strengths, which is taking a bunch of data, analyzing that data and visualizing it in a way that's digestible for the client to make decisions. And you can see that in our dashboards and the insights that we provide our clients today, on the municipal side. But specifically, the Mexico concern that we're working with has over, I think it's maybe 300 water plants that they have under their purview, and they're already collecting data from those places. And so what they've asked Varuna to do is to help them analyze that data and provide them insights that will help them either increase revenue or primarily decrease expenses in a couple of areas. So and those areas tend to be either labor expenses or things like equipment expenses. So what we'll do is we'll take that data, we'll start to predict things about pump failure, we'll start to predict things in terms of water quality, we'll start to predict, we'll do some of the dynamic routing that we talked about earlier, that I mentioned earlier. So it's a really, I call it a fun exercise, because they're just as excited about it as we are, and that's a good place to be in with your clients, where we're holding hands, jumping into this project together. So we're super excited about it.
No doubt. All right. Toughest question, I think, here is pull out the crystal ball, and prognosticate on where this world of sensors and data and IoT and water infrastructure is headed. In the next few years, what do you see happening?
That's a really good one. You talk about crystal balls. If I had one, I'd still be right here doing this. So
I know everybody always says that, like, oh, if I knew the future, I would be really wealthy, right?
Yeah, I'd be wealthy, but you know what? We're so engaged in loving this journey so much. I'd be right here too, no matter what. But you know what? I'll go out on a limb and say that the future. Okay, the future of IoT is bright, but there's some uninspiring things that are happening too, right? Which is people are just consistently using data to solve spot solutions, or they're using data to provide point solutions, right? And so we're not taking this real-time data to fundamentally change the future of water, right? To use this data for a fundamental redesign of how our water system works. That's something that we're not doing currently as an industry. And I'm talking about water specifically, not just IoT across several different industries. So, I hope as an industry we don't miss this opportunity. The big kind of game-changing opportunity, but we may. I still think the future is bright, just because of there's an uptake and an acceptance of how this can be used, which means that the adoption will continue to increase. The adoption of solutions such as Varuna, and there are several other great companies out there using IoT to solve different problems, right? They're using technology to solve different problems. And I believe that some other factors that come to mind is as there is attrition in the industry, specifically the water industry, those positions aren't being backfilled, so you'll have to do more with less. And so technology has to play into that solution. I think the future is bright. I can't give you any time frame, but I think it's closer than further away.
I like that point, though, that insight that, yes, this is all very helpful at these spot solutions, these specific problems, but how can you take these superpowers, as you call them, and really reimagine a lot of the way that water is moved around and treated and managed? It's always challenging because it's an ongoing process, right? Everyone's just focused on getting that water every day, cleaning it, doing what they have to do. It's sometimes hard to take a step back. Maybe if there's a big reinvestment in water infrastructure, hopefully there'll be an opportunity to think, longer term, bigger picture, differently about things as part of that.
Yeah, I'd love your take on this, right? So you think about the infrastructure bill, right? That's in motion now. And I was talking to a couple of water system managers, and they had an interesting take that I hadn't considered before. And when I asked them about this bill, I asked them, okay, is this game changing for you? And they would say, to a certain extent, it is, because it allows them to put in new infrastructure. But what they shared with me is that, what happens if we're just burying new infrastructure alongside the old infrastructure?
Exactly.
What happens if we're just pulling new pipes through the existing pipes, right? That stuff is still in the ground, right? So if we're trying to replace lead pipes and lead infrastructure, are we really doing it the right way, or are we just spending a lot of money and then the problem is still persistent or present because of our approach and how we use these funds? And also premise plumbing, right? You can rip and replace all of the infrastructure, but if I have old lead pipes in my house, I'm still getting some less than high quality water. So, love your take on that. What do you think?
I mean, that's I guess my concern or fear also is that here's these big checks, and let's go and just replace the infrastructure that's out there, right? We need to take this crumbling stuff out, put new stuff back in. It'll just be more of that model than really like, hold on, how do we radically reinvent? How do we take this opportunity, this funding opportunity, which maybe hasn't been seen for decades, and embrace the digital tools that we have and focus on resilience and think about different ways to distribute water and all of that. Because it's hard to do that while you're just trying to provide clean water and treat water and all that. It takes a very concerted effort, or will take a very concerted effort, to not just put new pipes in the ground, right?
Yeah, it will, and I think that we have to be part of that solution, right? When I say we, I mean not only Varuna, but you with what you're doing with waterloop, a bunch of other companies in the water space, whether they're water tech or consultants. It's this problem, it's this challenge that we all have to solve. Sometimes companies can be so myopic and only worry about what they're doing in the space, but no one company in this space is going to solve the problem that's at hand. It's just not going to happen. There's an opportunity to reimagine how to use this technology. Let's take pipes, for example. There's technology out there where you can place sensing technology in pipes, right? And so if we replace this infrastructure, why wouldn't we have that technology embedded in the new infrastructure that's going into the ground? Just thinking about any type of sensors that you can place in the homes to detect water quality. All these things are out there. It's just, are we taking a step back to say, okay, this is how we need to redesign the entire system so we can be so our children and grandchildren can have a better future in terms of water quality, water scarcity, all these problems that are right here in front of our eyes today.
Yeah, I mean, everyone talks about the water sector being risk adverse, being slow to innovate, needing to break free from those behaviors and stereotypes, if you will. And it definitely seems like the time.
What's your take on that? Do you believe they need to break from that? From that MO or not?
I mean, they're understandably focused on public health, right? And hey, we've got to our priority is making sure that we're meeting regulations, that we're taking care of people, and whatever it takes to get through the day, doing that is priority number one. So I totally understand that. That makes sense, right? But the opportunity's there. It's 2021. We've got the digital revolution that we're in the midst of, all the stuff that you've talked about today. Hopefully there's some bigger checks on the way. And, it just seems like there's the opportunity. I don't know who is going to drive that, make that happen. I don't know. We'll have to follow up in 5 years and see what came of this conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely going to take more money, right? Like the current dollar amount from the administration is a good start, but it's going to take a lot more investment. In terms of the need or the call for the industry to be less risk adverse, I'm one of those that. There's a fine line there, right?
Sure.
So my wife is a physician. She's been in healthcare. Same thing. Right? We don't want our healthcare industry just being so cutting edge on a lot of things that, it becomes a detriment to our health, right? Like there's a space for that in healthcare where, in a process that's well laid out where you have trials, you have you can take these like risky chances prior to bringing that to mainstream, and I'm not sure there's a place like that in water. That's like a formal process to bring new solutions. And when I say solutions, I don't mean just technology, right? So Varuna isn't led by, a couple of guys who think technology can solve the world, right? I mean, it's the solutions include technology. It includes workflow. It includes designs. It includes just services, everything. So I don't know. I think if the space had something like that, and there was a mindset within the space to have something like that, then that would be great. I think we'd all benefit from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have to do a little talking to folks and a little more research and see if there is kind of this sandbox out there, right? That lets the water sector experiment and try different things and pilot different things, and then be able to implement it as a result. I know people are always talking about trying to get flexibility in regulations, not that puts public health in jeopardy, but to allow utilities and infrastructure to be done in a different way. Yeah, you give me some ideas for some follow-up episodes and conversations here with some folks and dig into this some more for sure. Well, Jamail, I really appreciate the time. Awesome conversation. Enjoy it a lot. Continued best wishes to you guys at Varuna, what you're doing. Look forward to following it, and appreciate your time and the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to connecting in the future.
Waterloop.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's episode. A special thanks to Waterloop supporters, Spring Point Partners, and the Walton Family Foundation. The Waterloop podcast is sponsored by High Sierra Showerheads, the smart, stylish way to save energy, water, and money while enjoying a powerful shower. Use promo code LOOP20 for 20% off at highsierrashowerheads.com. If you like Waterloop, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on social media and visit waterloop.org to sign up for updates.
Waterloop, Waterloop, Waterloop.